We're going live. We're going hot. Google, fire it up. Someone tweeted me. Awesome. Hello, internet. Hello. Hello, it is me. I'm back. Forgive me. Sometimes my Polish background sneaks through. Not that I speak Polish. I have no working knowledge of the language, much to my mother's chagrin. She did try to teach me, but I apparently, as a baby, would not answer unless she spoke to me in English. So I'm a bad person for that reason. Acknowledged, at least according to my mom. Hello, everybody. I thought I would fire this up early this time in the hopes that, let's see, let's do this. Yeah, okay. There we go. In the hopes that we could get things going and my connection stream would be nice and steady, nothing weird, nothing confusing. I apologize for the lighting. Each time I do this, I learn something new. Like this time, these are terrible lights. This is a terrible lighting scheme for this issue. But whatever, that's fine. Next time, I'll come up with something cool and dramatic, like up lights, so that I look, I don't know, like a vampire or whatever. On the upside, you do get to see this cool picture of a dog that's over my shoulder. And if you, let's see, is it 6 o'clock yet? No. If you look over my shoulder, you can also see my cool dragon stained glass window. So there you go. Oh, the meeting is starting, says the thing. Excellent. I'm hoping just give everybody a minute to kind of jump on board and get situated. Hello to the 9 viewers that are with us right now. Hello, welcome. Hopefully you didn't hear me babbling like a fool in front of the camera before you joined. Okay, so my thought this time would be to finish going through the list of questions that I have that I've pulled off of my blog and also off of the good people at Forge Hub. Thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate all the support and the outpouring of positive emotions and energy. It really means a lot to me. Props to all the people that are out there. Halo players, competitive players, CE players. It's awesome. I really appreciate it. Okay. So we're going to keep going through this list. And then I'm kind of hoping that, not even hoping, I'm planning that we will transition over to some actual Q&A this time, so that people can actually submit their questions right here without having to have pre-recorded them on my blog or on Forge Hub or wherever they're out there. Although that's a good way to do it. So please keep on doing it if you could. And then I guess I'll kind of close things out today by basically just talking a little bit about a very common theme that I have gotten from numerous people, which is advice to new level designers, first-time level designers. There's lots and lots of questions about that. So, I'll try to talk about that a little bit. Okay. Let's see. Here we go. Here's an interesting question. This one came up. I thought this was actually an interesting point. One of the questions was, in your opinion, is having a single weapon that most players use and tends to be better than all the others good or bad for Halo's gameplay and for its map design? Is it an indication of a good competitive groundwork or a bad weapon balance? This is a very difficult question to nail correctly. I would say that in practice, it's better to have a matrix of weapons where each weapon has clear strengths and weaknesses. But as we covered last time, it can be very difficult, and actually this is covered in one of the blog entries as well. It can be very difficult to get weapons that fit nicely into a matrix and still feel plausible as guns. This is, I talk a little bit about this in one of the blog posts, where I'm kind of talking a lot about the shotgun and things like that. The more you try to make a weapon fit into a matrix, the more implausible it can seem. And honestly, that can be very strange to people who know anything about weapons or weapon design. For example, I've seen modern shooters now. I was playing one just the other day where, I was using this pistol in the game. It's a, kind of 6-shooter looking pistol, and it's only got 5 bullets in the chamber. and I understand that the designers had this thought, oh, well, you can upgrade the weapon and add more shots and all the rest of that type of thing. But as a gun aficionado, I look at that and I react very strangely, thinking, well, I mean, guns used to have 6 bullets, and now they actually carry 16 or more, depending if you're looking at the new, high-end Glocks that can shoot full auto. So to me, when I see a gun that really is that far off, but is pigeonholed to fit into a matrix that strongly, it feels very strange to me. It doesn't feel good. An example of a game that did this, I think, to kind of an extreme degree was the Warhawk game on PlayStation. Apologies, I never played it. I know some people who played it. We talked about it. I talked about it with them. I read a lot of the reviews. They apparently really tried to push that whole idea of if a weapon is good in this way, it's bad in that way. And it didn't, I don't know. I'm not sure that Warhawk is still played competitively. I don't know. But I do know that the team really kind of pushed that rigor of reinforcing the matrix. And I think it kind of bit him in the butt a little bit. So anyway, that's a mushy answer, but I guess my answer would be I think you want to err more on the side of a very strong matrix, where the weapons are differentiated by range and by function and by behavior. But the minute that you go too far across that boundary and the weapon starts to feel implausible or even worse, frustrating to use, you've probably gone too far. Okay, hopefully that answers that question. It was just sort of a non-answer, like, yeah, you should, do the smart thing. It's not a hard answer. Apologies, but sometimes there is no. So much of it comes down to kind of a subjective set of sensibilities. Okay. Here's a question. If you had the opportunity to design for any game, old or new, what game would it be? Dark Age of Camelot. Oh my God. Dark Age of Camelot. Yes, I realize that I'm probably exposing myself in a terrible, terrible way to all the people that are watching right now and saying, dude, what? I got to tell you, though, as a multiplayer designer and as someone who is kind of experienced the highs and lows of a virtual battlefield in a lot of different ways, the absolute highest peaks of my experience in PvP combat definitely came on the battlefields of Dark Age of Camelot. It was unbelievable. All right, I'm going to bore you guys with a story, but it's one of my favorite stories. I played in the Midgard realm. I was a Viking. If you don't know Dark Age of Camelot, check it out. Look it up. Do a little research. You can't play it anymore. It's offline now. And honestly, the graphics were pretty ghetto, but the gameplay was rad. Anyway, cool story to me, and I will share it with you. I played on the Viking realm. I was a giant troll. I was a powerful shaman, and I stomped my first time onto the PvP battlefield. And the 3 factions were Vikings, Arthurian knights, and Celtic fairies, like the Fae, that type of thing. And so I stomped onto the battlefield as this giant troll with all these cool magic powers, and there were a bunch of fairies that were, sort of out there taunting us in the woods. And me and all the Viking warriors were standing around like, those fairies, we're going to crush them, we'll kill them, let's go. And we started to chase them into the forest. And the players who were controlling the Fae kept running back, and then they cast these little annoying spells, and they run back. And we were chasing them into this valley across a bridge. There was like a little bridge. And of course the Vikings were like, yeah, we got you now. We go racing across the bridge. And what they had done was they had a bunch of spells that looked like flowers and mushrooms and stuff and trees. and they had planted them underneath the bridge, this whole layer of like deadly mushrooms and flowers and stuff like that. So when this streaming horde of Viking trolls and kobolds and berserker warriors and stuff like that went streaming across the bridge, all these spells went off like fireworks, just boom, bow, boom. We were paralyzed, poisoned, we were asleep, a bunch of folks were dead, and then the fairies came out of the woods and just murdered the crap out of us. I mean, it was glorious. It was like you would read about in a fantasy book. I got to tell you, it was exactly the scene from that. So for me, the depth of complexity and just the sheer cunning of what was possible in that kind of a MMO, PvP MMO situation was absolutely just amazing. I mean, it's still unrivaled in my personal experiences. I have recently fallen in love with MOBAs. I would love to make a MOBA, work on a MOBA. But then, I mean, who wouldn't, right? So whatevs. I don't know that's news, but still love MOBAs. Okay, so hopefully that's enough of a boring story for you guys and an answer to the question. If you are within the sound of my voice and you can ask a question, please do. I would love to see some questions pop up in the little questions board here just to confirm that we are live and everything's working good. I see that there are viewers. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining. Okay. What other games have you had a hand in multiplayer-wise, and which maps have you had the biggest part in? That's a tricky question. Multiplayer-wise, I have worked on Vigilante 8, which was an original PlayStation title, Vehicle Combat. I've worked on SOCOM 3, SOCOM for PSP, which is called Fireteam Bravo. I did pre-production on a game called MAG, which was a gigantic, 256-player, huge online shooter type thing. I did multiplayer for Far Cry 2, multiplayer for Far Cry 3, pre-production multiplayer on Far Cry 3. I don't want to overstate it, but I definitely was part of the the planning and the launch of that stuff. I'm trying to think of other cool Versus stuff. I think that's basically it. I think that's all the real kind of PvP stuff that I worked on. Which maps have I? Wait, somebody just tweeted me. Oh, awesome. People are tweeting a link around. That's cool. Thank you, by the way. Thank you, everybody, for jumping in and supporting. I really appreciate that. Okay, so hopefully that answers the question. Right, so Vigilante 8, SOCOM 3, SOCOM PSP, MAG, Far Cry 2, Far Cry 3, Halo CE. And on Halo 2, the Bungie team asked me to come back as a creative consultant to work on single-player maps. I did not work on the multiplayer for Halo 2. I actually responded to a question in the comments section of the blog about that. They were sort of asking questions about Halo 2 multiplayer. And to be honest, I have really turned a blind eye to Halo multiplayer on purpose because I'm a pretty uptight dude when it comes to trying to make sure the design is really tight and that I really believe in the changes that you're going to make. And I heard some kind of ruminations, and I'm not sure that I necessarily agreed with everything. So I tried to not stick my nose in because I really wanted it to be somebody else's baby. Ooh, I got a question. Awesome. Oh, awesome. SOCOM fan. Right on, brother. High five. Awesome. I appreciate that. That's cool. Yeah, SOCOM was a really cool series. Really cool series. I actually got to that series on the third version of the game. And that was really interesting to kind of see the lessons that the team had learned and then try to bring it in a new direction, bring it onto other platforms. And the pitch for MAG was actually, I don't know if I want to, how much time do we have? Yeah, I have a little time. I'm going to tell you guys this anyway. So the reason I was hired by Zipper in the first place was to actually try to come up with the new direction for the SOCOM franchise. That was really why I was hired. They said, we want to know what's the future of SOCOM look like? What should it be? And my pitch to this day was just a game I would love to play. At the time, this was kind of post-Second Iraq War, and I was doing a lot of research, trying to understand modern combat, understand special forces operations. And I read about this really cool thing that happened in the Second Iraq War. So the United States forces wanted to march on Baghdad as fast as they possibly could, but they had a problem. There were two ways to get there. They could either go up the Karbala Gap and get to Baghdad quickly, 2-3 days if they were whooshing along at top speed, or they would go around the long way, which would take 2 or 3 weeks. So they were worried about fighting the Republican Guard and all the sort of heavy tanks that Saddam Hussein had massed. And the reason that they didn't want to go through Karbala Gap was because of the Haditha Dam. The Iraqis had built this massive dam, and they were really worried that Saddam Hussein would actually send sappers into the dam to blow it up and flood the entire Karbala Gap, which, needless to say, that would be bad for soldiers, bad for tanks, bad for goats, piggies, duckies, killed kids. I mean, it'd be bad. And so what they did was they took an entire, I think it was a platoon of Rangers, and they basically parachuted them in behind enemy lines to take and hold the Haditha Dam at all costs while the armored, divisions were moving across the southern part of Iraq. And I just thought that's the future of SOCOM. That's what MAG should be, is special forces operations on a massive scale that's causing, kind of big parts of the map to flip one way or the other, like a big giant sort of Third World War kind of map. So anyway, that was the pitch, and I was really excited about that. Unfortunately, Sony, I knew we were going to be heading into deep water and in a little bit of trouble when in the very first meeting, the executive producer kind of pulled me aside and she said, I understand that you're thinking about not having traditional allies of the United States. And I said, well, yeah, I mean, I think it would be interesting if we kind of mix it up, like who's on what side? Like, for example, maybe it's not us and Great Britain this time. And she said, the United States has a special relationship with Great Britain. As an international company, Sony could never condone shipping a game where that special relationship was not recognized. And I was kind of like, but it's just make-believe. We're just making it up. It's just for a cool story. Like, how cool would that be? She didn't think that would be cool at all. So anyway, yeah, MAG got turned into something else. Props to the MAG team for shipping a game. It wasn't the game we pitched, but that's okay. All right, where are we here? Oh, here we go. Oh, yes, cool. Crossplay, in-game leaderboards. What are my thoughts on that? Good question. Let me answer that question. The mission, the raison d'etre, if you want to be super smart about it, the reason that Zipper existed was because certain producers and executive producers at Sony recognized the success of Halo, and they really wanted to have an answer for that on PlayStation. It was critical. And so there were some producers at Sony who were dedicated to trying to just comb through the multiplayer setting and think of anything and everything that would make them not only competitive, but maybe even a little bit better than the feature set that was offered in Halo and on Xbox Live. And the Zipper team just broke their backs trying to bring all those features to life. So you're right. I think that there's an awful lot of features that, a lot of shooter development teams these days don't even bother with, because I just think that they're maybe not as critical. They're just not as kind of like the high-end features for community and player support. And so I just think that people have a tendency to leave them out. Hopefully that is enough of an answer. All right, I got a lot more questions, so I'm going to keep moving here. Let's see. Finding the question section was a pain. Understood, yes. Competitive Halo CE scene. Any maps that I expected to be fan favorites? Any that I'm surprised to see on the list? Let's see. Battle Creek, Derelict, Hang 'em High, Rat Race, Chill Out, Damnation. Okay. some of the biggest changes that happened to these maps in development? Oh, great question. Okay. Well, you guys want to hear a funny story about Damnation? Damnation was made by the legendary Dave Dunn, who came to me. Now, Dave, I have nothing but the highest respect for Dave. He is a workhorse when it comes to production, and he's as stable a guy as you could ever hope for in terms of if you put pressure on him and you say, Dave Dunn, we need to get something finished, he will do it. But he also has a couple of interesting strategies when it comes to coping with stress, or at least he used to in the old days. And one of them was he would get hammered on occasion. Apologies if any of our audience out there is underage. Yes, I am talking about drinking beer. And so Dave came over to my desk one day, and he said, and he was moving through some stress. He was, releasing stress. And he said, Hardy, I really want to make a map for multiplayer. And he was pretty rocked. I said, well, Dave, it takes a lot of time. He goes, I don't care. What could I do? I said, well, let's take a look at some of your stuff and see if we can figure out a place that we could use. And the core geometry of Damnation was actually a piece that he had modeled for something else that had been cut. And it was just a really interesting piece of geometry. And so as we were looking at it, it occurred to me that we could do sort of an asymmetrical thing. I mean, he was sort of looking at it, and we were thinking about the time and the resources that we had left. And he was saying, oh my gosh, if we're going to try to make this happen, I don't know if I could put this over here and do all this modeling. And I said, what if we, made the starting positions asymmetrical? And that was just kind of the start of it right there. So Dave Dunn, he really wanted to be a part of multiplayer. He thought it was really cool. And so he dove into to make it happen. So Damnation, I would have to say, was the one that he was resurrected out of another piece of geometry. And, Dave just worked his butt off to make sure that it got in and was cool. Okay. Let's see. Mandatory selection. Let's see. Other ones that I'm surprised to see on there. I guess I just answered. Let's see. Yeah, I guess I'm a little surprised to see Rat Race on there. Honestly, honest answer time, Rat Race was the very first map I ever modeled. It literally was me using the extrude function inside of 3D Studio Max and going, oh, cool, I can make these in little hallways. And I was like, oh, that's kind of boring. Maybe I should make the hallway go down. Uh-oh, I better have it connect at the other end. So, yeah. So pretend that I didn't say all that and you just believe that it was all part of a deliberate genius plot on my part to make something awesome. So there you go. Yes, Rat Race and Damnation, probably the two that had the most changes. Okay. How are we doing here? I think this is part 2 of that same question. So, that's it? No more questions? Wow. Come on, guys. No questions? All right. Well, there's still some written down, so let's work on this. Right. So, okay. No, there was another one. I know in large part of consumers love aesthetics and flashy graphics. Has that gotten in the way of recent map designs, Halo and other? Yes. I will answer that question without hesitation. Not only is flashy map design and never liked Rat Race. Oh, that's okay. As long as you liked at least one map, I consider it a win. Not even mine. I don't mind. As long as you liked one map, it's a win. What was I going to say? Oh, right. Talking about map design. So yes, I definitely believe that the visual complexity of maps is just off the charts, to the point where we ran into some very interesting problems doing multiplayer map design for Far Cry 2. The Far Cry engine is so advanced and so sophisticated, or was at the time, that we could make levels that looked photorealistic. Problem with that was that then making the maps readable and usable to players was incredibly challenging. So yes, the further the graphical fidelity pushes forward on multiplayer map design, the more challenging it gets for teams. We came up with a bunch of interesting strategies of how to make those maps work kind of in a high fidelity engine on Far Cry. But I still think there's a lot of research and exploration and expression to do in that area. So good question. Let's see what do we have here. Never liked Rat Race. I'm not going to let that hurt my feelings. What? Okay. If I could go back in time with the knowledge, this is a great question. This is an awesome question. If I could go back in time with the knowledge that I have today, what would you have changed about the maps I worked on for Halo 1? Well, last time I talked about fixing the Sidewinder. I totally would have made Sidewinder work the way it was designed to work. I won't bore you with the full answer now because we have limited time, but you could check that out. And I would change boarding action. I would have fixed boarding action in a better way. The idea of a squad of Marines attacking another ship and fighting their way on, I still think is a really, really cool theme. When we had the prototype backpack or jetpacks in Halo 1, then you could see a whole flotilla of Marines launch and go flying over towards the other side while you were covering them with your sniper rifle. That was awesome. My changes to that map were, they were a crime. Yes, someone told me last time that they really enjoyed snipers on boarding action. That is really fun. Agreed. That's pretty much the only way that map still makes sense. And that really kind of, I don't know. I hate it if a map can really only be used one way. So anyway, great question. Hopefully that's a good answer. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Here's a fun question. Did you expect players to figure out tricks for grenading power weapons and power-ups to themselves, whether it was or wasn't? No, I had no idea that players would become so skilled that they would grenade weapons and power-ups to themselves. I think that's awesome. I think that's the coolest thing. Someone sent me a video of a player kind of running around on Battle Creek, and he kind of lined himself up with the stone bridge that was up there in the air, and he knew one notch, and he threw the grenade and then kind of stood there, and then the rocket launcher comes falling down out of the sky. I think that's spectacular. Would I have changed anything about it? Yeah, I definitely would have. The reason that I included the weapons being able to move was because it's more fun. It's more interesting. I mean, I was thinking of it more as a denial technique. If you saw someone deliberately going for a particular power-up or weapon, you could conceivably deny them if you were smart enough to be able to do that. The idea of kind of learning that very particular skill of sending that, flying right back towards you, honestly, it never occurred to me. I think there's a really easy fix. I mean, a lot of the weapons and the environments are very simple because they're flat spaces or whatever. Just a teeny tiny wall, a couple little jibba jabbas kind of sticking up around it would just make it so that explosions would more likely send that stuff flying in different directions. But it's a strategy now. It's something that players do, and I am in awe of the complexity and the sophistication in the way that players have kind of adapted to the mechanics as they exist. So I wrote this as a reply to one of the questions that was posted on my blog. People were sort of saying, well, did you think people would play it this way? I didn't. I can't pretend that I had this vision for all these, complex strategies that people came up with. That said, it would be fascinating to try to re-engage with the design and figure out, okay, what are people doing and what do they like about that? And how do you keep the elements that they like and continue to kind of express the design moving forward? I think that's an absolutely fascinating problem. So great question. Thank you for asking that. Okay, let's see. If I was offered a job at 343 lead level multiplayer designer, would I accept it? I'd have to meet the team. The key with any kind of job, especially a creative job, is you've got to understand the culture that you're stepping into. That's really critical. I really want to talk about job stuff, but I'm not going to get into that now. I have a little bit of time, so maybe this is a way to kind of segue a little bit. If any of you are watching my blog, kind of paying attention to it, you might see that I've been getting a lot of questions about process, about professional opportunities, about how do you get a job doing this kind of stuff, and it's out of scope to really talk about in this kind of format. I think actually having a real conversation with people about that is a better way to do it. And the solution that popped into my head was I could actually do a real webinar, something where we could talk about stuff and I could teach people my process or whatever. So those kinds of questions, like how do I know if the level is good or bad? How do you come up with ideas? How do you get a job doing this kind of stuff? What's your process look like? All those kinds of questions. If you're interested and you think that this is something that you'd like to do or you really want to know more about process, I hope you'll kind of take a look at that webinar and think about it, because I think it could be cool. Okay, where are we here? Boarding action. Oops, wait, I think I missed part one. Boarding action. Did boarding action appear in other campaign maps? Oh, good questions. Okay, right. I don't remember how so the question, I'll just put it up there. I don't remember exactly how the jetpacks work, because they weren't in for very long. Chris Butcher put them in. He created the cool, structure to make them work. You could control the thrust. I remember that. You could kind of control up and down. It wasn't a single strong boost. No, it was you could control thrust up and down, so you could sort of orient yourself. You could pick a direction, go, kind of land there. And no, what we did was Carney, I asked him to take the models for Pillar of Autumn and just strip the side off, and we used that as the basis. And then once we had that shell, we stuck the gameplay level, the gameplay components into it, and tried to make it look as much like the Pillar of Autumn as we could. So, good question. Okay. Was the jetpack strictly limited to the jetpack? Okay. people are flipping out about the jetpack. It was a prototype. It was a prototype that Chris Butcher put in the game, and it was so cool. I mean, I can't say I'm still close friends with Chris, but at the time we'd come up together working on Oni, and we really had a close relationship. And part of the process on the Halo games is lobbying. People are like, oh, I made this gun, or oh, I think this should be in there, or I think that should be in there. And you kind of, you try to express those ideas, at least, back in the day, you'd express those ideas in the engine, and people would look at it and go, oh, wow, that's pretty neat. So Chris, was really convinced that jetpacks could be a thing. And so he spent the time to make that functionality work. And because I support Chris, I was like, all right, well then let's actually make it something that is a focus of one of the multiplayer maps. It could be really cool. So please don't freak out about jetpacks, but they definitely existed all the way back then in the day. All right, where are we here? Let's see. All right, here's a good question, and I think we're going to probably have to wrap it up. For almost every overshield in the game, there's a plasma rifle along the way. Was this a conscious decision? Yes, absolutely. The intention was, of course, that you would be able to outfit yourself like a Covenant warrior. I mean, going towards the mental model of the combat, the way that the weapons and the shields were meant to work together, it was absolutely intentional. Yes. Okay. Boom. All right. I guess that is all the time. Yeah, we're a little bit over. All right. Well, hey, everybody, thank you so much for joining me again. We will do it again next week. All right. Thanks a lot. See you then.